And I was thinking about this, right? Because some of this has come off of like some conversations that we've had on Sim Nation, conversations I've had just in the streets. You know, there's a lot of players, right, who get a lot of love for a lot of different reasons. And quite honestly, I think a lot of times people are scared or just too dumb to admit that some of these guys are overrated, you know. So I want to know. I already got the person in my head who I'm going to say, and I actually hope we don't agree. I really hope we don't agree. But I know who I'm going to say. Who do you think is the most overrated player in the NBA books?
I was gonna say the most overrated player. So just to be sure, the criteria is people have to think that they're good or
Yeah.
pretty good,
And
right?
and they get this person gets like attention and love and they're adorned as one of the best players, but you just don't think they are. Or maybe you think they are, you just don't think they're as good as people say they are.
All right, the one who would fit my criteria the most right now, this very day, would probably be John Wall.
That's interesting.
Probably be John Wall. And I've said this before on Sim Nation. Because there are people who up until last year would say they prefer John over like Russell Westbrook or Kyrie Irving. Like there are people who'd say this, and that looks like a ludicrous thing to say. Really by any measure, just comparing their careers. Because John Wall is playing with other All Stars.
Mm-hmm.
He's playing with a coach that has been to the finals right now. I know everybody doesn't love Scott Brooks, but um, that's just the fact of the matter.
Right.
And you could argue that he has given him the least success. You know what I'm saying? And has John seriously come up big in the playoffs? Has John um like I think the biggest thing about John is that as a point guard, his team is not behind him.
Mm.
People complain, and I'm not making this about John versus Westbrook, or even Kyle Lowry, right? Who's another guy, a point guard that gets heavily criticized, way beyond what he should get criticized for if you look at his actual production and career and where he's been, right?
Mm-hmm.
John Wall, like I don't think you have to be a traditional point guard. Steph Curry's not a traditional point guard. He spends a lot of time off ball. I still think he's a great point guard. He's just a point guard who primarily scores. Um, but what Steph, Westbrook, and Lowry all have is their team is behind them.
Mm-hmm.
I would even say Kyrie Irving seems to have that for the most part in Boston, even though I think Kyrie Irving is out of the top point guards. I mean, between him and Dame, just the worst playmakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, not great guys at setting up and passing and getting guys into spots from a strategic standpoint. Um, but John Wall does not have his team's back and he doesn't have their back. And I think that's the worst. Similar to a quarterback, if the offensive line don't believe in you, that team is done. And it's this, I think the same things with the Washington Wizards. I think that's the number one problem with the Washington Wizards. They have other issues, but I think the number one problem, which has bared out over the last 2 years, is that that team does not have John Wall's back, and that is why he is overrated. I think people take his athleticism. He came in kind of heavy, as we discussed before, so he doesn't look as explosive in terms of the jumping. People look at the numbers, the fact that there were a couple of years where his defense was actually pretty strong and they automatically put him where he shouldn't be, which is he is a losing point guard right now, and
Mm.
people aren't calling him out on that. And he's getting $40 million like a year from like next year on.
Yeah. You know, that's strong. I must say that's strong. And you make a strong case, and it's hard to totally argue with that. And I don't think that here's my thing, and I'm going to say this before I give you mine. I think that John Wall is playing beneath the level that we've seen him play. I think he's capable of more, but I do believe he's in a toxic situation, whether or not it's of his own doing or not. He's in a toxic situation, and I just think that he's not in the right spot from any way, shape, or form to be the type of player that I think he can still be. You did say, has he ever done had been really great in the postseason? In the 2017 playoffs, he was phenomenal, right? He was
He's had good games.
I mean, for the whole playoffs, for the 13 postseason games they had, he averaged 27 points, 3.7 rebounds, and 10.3 assists. I mean, he was phenomenal, and he shot 34% from 3-point range, which for him is really, really good, right? Played great defense, ran the floor, took all kinds of big shots, knocked down big shots, but something went wrong at the beginning of last season. And everything went like this, especially between him and Brad Beal and other people or whatever. So I think that there's still room for John Wall to get back to where he was and perhaps even, ascend even higher. I mean, it's not as if he's 33 years old or anything
he's pretty
like
young.
that. He's only 28,
But
right?
here's my argument to that though. If you look at the top point guards in the league and you just simply trade them for John Wall, I think everybody who's in the top 5, 6, 7, 8, you probably get better results than he's gotten. And I don't think people think that. I think if you just put Damian Lillard on the Wizards, they're just a better team. If you just put Kyrie Irving on the Wizards, they're a better team. If definitely Russell Westbrook, they're just a better team. Obviously Steph Curry, they're just a better team. Chris Paul, they're just a better team. You know what I'm saying? I think John Wall is a guy who puts up big numbers, but he has been making his team underachieve. Because if he was good, because here's the trap with John Wall. If you think he was great, then the only option you have to say is to admit that every single year they lost to an inferior team.
Well, I don't think he was great. I think he was really good.
But people think he's great.
No, I think he was on the cusp of being great. I mean, if you think about it, in the postseason, they lost in 7 games to the Boston Celtics. And that was a really, really good Boston Celtics team that only lost to Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, and Kevin Love in the Eastern Conference Finals.
But here's the thing though. On paper, the Washington Wizards had the better all-stars.
Better all-stars. Yeah, but I don't think they were a better team overall.
But that's my point. That's exactly my point. Is that Washington, here's the thing. Washington has never in his entire career, ever, no matter how good his numbers were, no matter how well he played, looked like a good team.
I don't know. I think that year they looked like a good team.
I don't think they look like a good team. And I think that was better than he is now. And my point isn't that he's always been 100% totally overrated, but I think people have thought he was going to turn into something. And the last 2 years, he's gone south. And now he is so far south that he should no longer be. For instance, who's better, John Wall or Kemba Walker? See, overrated. That's my point. Because Kemba Walker is playing so much better than John Wall, it's unreasonable to hesitate.
Playing better than he is right now. But I mean, and I don't honestly, it's not like John Wall is having just a dreadful year. I mean, he's having a down year for what he had been doing over the last 5 seasons. But he's averaging 21.5 points a game, 7.6 assists, 2.5 steals a game.
Yeah, that's my point. He looks good on paper, but then when you investigate, he's the Jay Cutler of basketball.
Well, Jay Cutler never looked good on paper.
So
good on paper, and it wasn't even in Chicago.
I've spoken. I can't say who I've spoken to, but I know from firsthand accounts that Jay Cutler in that locker room was what some sports commentators said. Whereas basically, yeah, we will never win because it doesn't matter if he throws less interceptions. He is a locker room breaking guy with this team.
Absolutely.
There are too many people on this team that will not follow him for us to succeed. Which is your point with Jimmy Butler. That's your point. That's been your point with Jimmy Butler.
But
the difference being, I think Jimmy Butler has produced better results than John Wall in terms of the on-offs.
I don't know. I don't know about that, bro. I mean, what has Jimmy Butler done in the postseason?
Jimmy Butler has not been on a very good team uh, at all. And Minnesota, him coming back from injury, like in Minnesota last year, was looking like a very good team with Jimmy Butler, and he got hurt. And when he came back, yeah, they lost to Houston, which was a
Mm.
better team on paper, right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not doubting it.
Same thing with them versus Boston. They looked like they were going to beat Boston, and then they lost Rondo.
And then it
Like,
all Rondo. Yeah,
but they looked like they were going to beat Boston. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Jimmy Butler teams at times look like, okay, that team is starting to look really legit. And Jimmy has his flaws, but people know Jimmy has his flaws. I think some people think that John Wall is a top 5 point guard, and I find that to be
well,
unreasonable.
he was playing at that level at one point, but now this year he's not, and because of the horrible team
You
result.
said it started last year though, and it did.
Yeah, it did. It started last year, right now. But I mean, last year he had a strong year. Last year he had a strong year, but it was just that I think the beef between he and Bill, and then the injuries that they had, him included, last year, I think is what derailed them. But let me talk about my guy.
Who's your guy? Who's your guy?
You've already mentioned him, actually.
Is it Jimmy Butler? Is this an
It's not
excuse?
Jimmy. This is not a
Okay, thank
conspiracy.
God. Thank God.
I'm not gonna do that. But it is Kyrie Irving.
It's Kyrie Irving. Okay.
Yeah. Um, I believe Kyrie Irving is the best finishing player, 6'2" and under, that I've seen. Maybe the only other person close to him in terms of finishing with proficiency, especially for a guy who doesn't play above the rim. The only other guy I can think of close is Tony Parker.
Tony Parker, yeah.
In
Tony
terms
Parker.
of his
Tony
skill.
Parker's probably overall,
Yes. I mean, just right.
Yeah.
But Kyrie is a spectacular offensive player.
Yeah.
But defensively, I think that he is below average. From a standpoint of creating for teammates, I think he is average at best. And so the profile that I just created is not a profile of a bad player by any stretch. And clearly, it's not a profile of a player that cannot win a championship. He's already played an integral role in a championship team. But what it is a profile of a player who is not a superstar. They are a star. And for me, I think Kyrie Irving is almost universally thought of as a superstar by so many people. I mean, even 2K puts him on the cover of I mean, and I understand why. He has the appeal that young basketball fans are interested in. He's short enough for them to be able to relate to him from a size standpoint, because he's not this big, huge, hulking guy. And then he has the cool, nasty dribble moves.
Yeah.
And he can shoot the ball from the outside. So everything that the young people, who maybe could only ever dream of playing, everything that they would like or would be attracted to, he's got. And I think that skews the view of him. And also, obviously, we're in an era in terms of basketball and even basketball fans where there is such a high emphasis placed on scoring, and there's a degraded level of appreciation for defense. And two-way players don't get respected as much as a one-dimensional offensive player. And that is what Kyrie is. He is a one-dimensional offensive player. He's a really good one, but he's a one-dimensional offensive player. And to me, that guy doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as some of the guys who play both ends of the floor and create for their team. Now, it's different, okay, because Steph is not a great defender. Steph plays passing lanes, one-on-one defense against most big-time point guards. They hide him. They try to put Clay on him instead of. So we know that. But Steph does at least create better for his team than Kyrie does, even in an offense where he doesn't even dominate the ball. He's still a better passer. Secondly, Steph's the greatest shooter that ever lived, period. So that matters. That really does matter. So I can't put Steph in that same overrated category, because even though Steph, some people could make an argument that Steph is somewhat one-dimensional. Well, that one dimension is better than every.
He's a 3-point Shaq, right? Like he don't need to be good at nothing else.
You know, it doesn't matter because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
shoot so well from every standpoint: running, jumping, standstill, catch and shoot, whatever, coming off a screen, you name it, off 1 foot, doesn't matter. I can shoot. Nobody else has shot like me, so I can't put him in that same category. But I do think that Kyrie is the most overrated player.
Now I've gone on record on Sim Nation as saying I thought Kyrie was overrated, but let me ask you just to clarify, because we're talking about most overrated, right?
Right.
Where do you rank Kyrie amongst point guards right now? Now, let's be fair to Kyrie, he's coming off of a knee injury and is not 100%.
I don't care nothing about his knee injury, man. That's
That's not really fair. Like he didn't even have an off season. Like he's clearly not 100% in shape yet. Like. You good?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just saying he's clearly not 100% in shape, but the question still stands. Where do you rank Kyrie, you personally?
You know what? I gotta kind of look through where it, like, so you kind of got to go process of elimination. I think he's better than Kyle Lowry. Okay. I think he's better than Eric Bledsoe. I think he's better than Collison. I don't think he's better than Ben Simmons. You know, Ben Simmons has obvious holes, right? But Ben Simmons has that same overpowering one dimension that you can't do anything about. And you ask me, does Ben Simmons make everybody on the floor better? Absolutely, he does. Can you stop him? No, not you. You can't, because if you could, they would. I mean, you kind of try to overbalance the floor and you try to give him the jump shot, but the guy is such a good passer. The size is such a factor that, to me, I don't.
I'm okay. So let me ask you. I have a couple questions to ask you, because I think we're in weird territory here. Now you haven't fully ranked him yet. The audience can see you're a little wishy-washy on this. I'm gonna let it go. It's the first show. I'm gonna take it easy on you. So you said he's better than Kyle Lowry.
Yes.
Do you think the Toronto Raptors would be better if you traded Kyle Lowry for Kyrie Irving?
You know what?
That's what I'm saying.
You know what? I don't think so. And here's the reason why. Because Kyle Lowry is a superior defender.
So here's the thing, Mazique, and this is what I'm getting to a degree with John Wall, is when it comes to point guards don't always make sense. People want point guards to make perfect sense. They want it to be, you got 20 points, 10 assists, you pass the ball, you bring it up court, you tell everybody where to go. That means you're a good point guard. Everybody wants to be Chris Paul. And this is how the Russell Westbrook Defense Committee got started, amongst other things. And I was saying, no, the Oklahoma City Thunder are pretty happy with Russell Westbrook, because what he does is a matchup advantage that teams can't compensate for. And even though I thought Chris Paul was a great point guard, I thought that people were taking the prototypical thing so far that they were ignoring what they were getting out of him. And he would sometimes dominate the matchup. And when you talk about playoff point guards, dominating the matchup does matter. When you're talking about all time, matchups don't matter as much. But when you're talking about theory crafting, they might not matter as much. But when you talk about head to head, matchups definitely matter, right? So that's just, so the thing about it is, when you're talking about point guards, you're saying, what kind of team can I put you on to maximize the results?
But
and
you
so
know what? I don't
just
think
to close out the point, I don't think that Kyrie Irving on a team like Toronto, where his primary thing is to defend, hit open threes, get guys into their spots and move the ball, I don't think he's better at that than Kyle Lowry would be. And so I don't know if you'd necessarily get better results, because on that team, the defense is going to be better with Lowry. And when it comes to crunch time, the ball is going to be either moving or in the hands of Kawhi Leonard. There's not a question of, should it just be in Lowry's hands? Whereas with Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum, there's going to consistently, until they work it out, be this issue of, shouldn't y'all just be throwing it to Jason Tatum? And does Kyrie have a problem with that? that's going to be a problem going forward. And so when you talk about quote unquote better point guards, it's how the point guard adds to the winning. Now, in Kyrie's defense, and here's where I'm going to defend Kyrie Irving to what you were saying. You, I think, have sweeping under the rug Kyrie's skill. Most people think of his skill as dribbling and finishing, but his real skill, and I hate to use this term because it's so overused and dumb, but it's just true. It's the clutch gene. Kyrie Irving is better in big games, big moments. Kyrie Irving, as great as Steph is, against Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving has the capability to output like Steph Curry.
Yeah.
That doesn't work on every team.
But I think there's a caveat to that.
Go ahead.
I think he has that ability when he's playing second. I don't think that he can do that if he's the guy, only the guy, because we haven't seen him do that. We saw Kyrie Irving at the same level of play, basically put together worse seasons than what we're way worse seasons than what we saw from John Wall.
But Kyrie Wall's career. Well, I mean, they were both injury prone early in their careers, so it's really.
But when Kyrie, I mean, there were seasons like, okay, Kyrie's third season, he played 71 games.
Yeah, but how many games did he play in his first two?
He played 51 the first season. He played 59 the second, and then he played 71 in the third.
Constantly injured and on terrible teams. I mean, he's also playing with Anthony Bennett.
But here's what I'm saying. I mean, Washington,
terrible teams. Like people expected. Good.
Now Washington's not a good team either.
They're not good, but they weren't as terrible as the Cavs. Like the Cavs they were a worse organization at that time. Like they were in shambles. Like everybody expected them to be in the lottery every year. Like it was a situation where it didn't matter what Kyrie did, and they didn't have like veteran leaders. They didn't have a stable coaching situation. Like it was a nightmare. Like I wouldn't expect any point guard to perform well under those circumstances, especially. And you know my rule in Sim Nation, when it comes to point guards, I don't judge young point guards harshly. I can talk about their game, but understand that when I'm talking about a young point guard's game, if they turn around and change tomorrow, I'm totally with it because that's how it goes with young point guards. And real quick, we've seen both Tyreke Evans average 25 and 5 in his first year and then not really do much. And we've seen Chauncey Billups bounce around, look like an absolute bust, and then turn into a finals MVP. So, and you can, Tony Parker didn't look like he was going to be Tony Parker until a little bit of the ways in. He was drafted late, all that other stuff. So, is Steph Curry injury prone? Part of the reason the Golden State Warriors are the way they are is because Steph couldn't get a contract that John Wall got because he had the injuries. He looked a little inconsistent, looked kind of shaky, still not sure like how great he's going to be. And he got a pretty favorable contract because you didn't know if he was going to be healthy. And if he was healthy, it wasn't like Anthony Davis where it's like, well, we just have to take the risk because if he's healthy, he's the best player in the league. It wasn't like that with Steph. And I do think Steph is top 3 in the league. I think he's a top 3 player in the league. So, it's young point guards. That's how young point guards go. So I'm not going to have any argument where I say, well, look at what they did the first 3 years because they're point guards and that can go any old way with young point guards. It's a lot of responsibility.
Well, see, I guess my thing is Kyrie's the same player. He's the same player he was then. He's the same guy.
Kyrie's worked on his game, man.
I mean, he's better at the same stuff that he was good at to begin with.
But that's everybody. I mean, so is Steph.
Some guys.
Steph ain't do nothing new. He could shoot from half court when he was 16 years old.
Some guys add layers to their game.
I don't think Steph has added layers to his game. I think Steph just got healthier and better and more confident, and they got a better scheme, and other guys around him got better. And, but I don't think he's a different player.
I actually think he's a better defender, even though he's still not great. I think he's a better defender.
But he ain't great, so it doesn't really matter. And I think it's easy to be a better defender. Because they said the same thing about Kyrie last year. Oh, he's a better defender now. But he's not really better. He's just playing on a team with a better defensive scheme. I feel like same thing with Steph. It's like, if you have him guard, Russell Westbrook or somebody like that, I think he just gets blown up every single time. Like every single time. And Steve Kerr knows it too. So, can Steph guard Kyrie Irving? No, he can't guard Kyrie Irving. It looks like good defense, but Kyrie somehow still scores. right? They don't want the matchup. So his defense doesn't matter in him getting better. What matters is his overall intelligence, his consistency, and his ability to play big in big moments.
See,
That's what
I
matters.
don't think that for the sake of this particular argument, we can take into consideration how they fit into their specific teams. That at the bottom line, at the end of the day, is going to be the most important thing. But when we're talking about who's better, okay, give you a perfect example, like the Oklahoma City Thunder teams that had Westbrook and Harden and Durant, right?
I mean, that was a pretty short time. They were very, very young.
Right, but that even okay, take Harden off, just Durant and Westbrook, right? Uh, most people felt that Westbrook wasn't the right type of point guard for that team because those two guys together, their talent level was so high that they were able to get to places that they got. But in the postseason, their style of play, their approach on offense was not one that was a winning approach.
Yeah, and
That was
I firmly disagree with that assertion. My assertion has always been with Oklahoma City is that if Westbrook is your point guard, you need to surround him with shooting, similar to Ben Simmons. And we're seeing the same thing with Ben Simmons. And Russell's a better shooter than Ben Simmons, but it's still the same thing. When you have a guy who's going to push the ball in the open court and get dribble penetration at a high level in the half court game, if they don't have shooting, you're killing your whole team. And that's what Philly's going through right now. It's the same exact thing. Ben Simmons last year looking really good. Philly was kind of doing okay. They got those two shooters. Philly skyrocketed because all of a sudden Ben Simmons becomes unguardable. They lost those shooters, right? And they put Markelle Fultz in the starting lineup, and now Ben Simmons has no space. Oklahoma City has failed to put solid shooting around their team for a very, very long time, and they still have won almost or more than 50 games for most of Russell's career. They've made it to NBA Finals. They've won several playoff series. Like they're not a team that has ever. I mean, maybe last year theoretically you could argue they underachieved losing to Utah. I don't think that's true. That's the only time you could argue that they underachieved and lost to a team that they shouldn't have lost to. And that's what we're really talking about is losing to teams you should not have lost
no,
to.
but that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about individually. Individually, which of these guys are better? This is the question because you asked me to rank Kyrie Irving, right? And so the point I was getting at is with that Oklahoma City team, I believe, and I think there are other people who would support this opinion. I believe that a better style, a better profile point guard for that team would have been someone like Chauncey Billups. Now, is Chauncey Billups a better player than Russell Westbrook? No, he's not. He's not. Russell does too many things. He's athletic overall as a singular guy, as a talent. He's far more talented than Chauncey Billups. But Chauncey Billups' style, I think, would have been a much better fit because they needed people to run an offense sometimes. When isolation is not going to work and isolation is not going to be the way for you to ultimately get a bucket, which is pretty much their default during that time. You need someone who can run and engineer an offense. And also a guy who can knock down an open jump shot, which does kind of speak to your point to a degree about surrounding dynamic players with shooters. So that personally is my thing. But what I'm talking about is how if you're asking me who's better, Chauncey Billups or Russell Westbrook, I'm probably going to tell you Westbrook all the time. Doesn't mean that he's the best fit for that particular team. So when we talk about Kyle Lowry and Kyrie Irving, which is what we were talking about originally, you say is Kyrie Irving better than Kyle Lowry? I think I would give Kyrie Irving an edge over Kyle Lowry because I think offensively he's just that much better. The clutch aspect is that. But on that particular team, I don't know that they need everything that Kyrie Irving delivers because they have Kawhi, because they have Jonas Valanciunas. What Kyle Lowry can do is enough for them. But individually, I would give Kyrie an edge. I do have an answer for you, and I know people are going to, if they had tomatoes to throw at the screen, they're going to do it. Kyrie Irving, in my opinion, is the 7th best point guard in the NBA.
Okay, who's your top 6?
Okay, so and not necessarily going to rank these
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, just six. We don't need to muddy the conversation
Well,
with arbitrary ranking.
there's two on one team that I say are better.
Chris Paul and James Harden.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Chris Paul and James Harden. Then I would go Russell. Okay. Then I would go Damian Lillard. I would take Lillard. Now, Steph is 5. And then we have Ben Simmons. I believe I would take Ben Simmons over Kyrie Irving. Now, if I think that Kemba and Kyrie are like identical.
I've been saying that on Sim Nation. I don't think that. I think identical is a little. It's, you know what it is. I don't want to take away from Kyrie how great he's been with LeBron James.
Yes.
And his ability to throw up 40, 50,
Yes.
really carry the offense and be extremely dynamic. Like hit clutch shots in great players' faces. And the thing about Kyrie that I would take over Kemba is Kyrie's ability to score is completely undefendable when he's in his bag. And it's not about his ball handle. It's about his ability to, you can call it finishing. I think it's just score. He knows how to get up shots that go in around people, and there's a certain point where there's nothing you can really do about it. I don't know if Kemba's offensive peak is there. I do think Kemba is more solid and consistent at the other stuff, right? Kemba just take this screen and hit a three. He's gonna just do it at a better clip, right? I think Kemba's a little faster than Kyrie.
He's faster. He's a better athlete,
right? He's a better athlete than Kyrie Irving, which brings you consistency, right? So I think better is like I said, I think it's a conversation, and people don't think it's a conversation. That's my point. If the end of the conversation was that Kyrie is better than Kemba Walker, and you can prove it for these reasons, I might agree with you. But to say that it's not a conversation is where the overrated thing comes in. So we both agree that Kyrie is overrated. However, I don't think Kyrie, and I'm glad you put him at 7, because I don't think people have Kyrie higher than 5.
I think some people, I know, I've heard people tell me Kyrie's the best point guard in the NBA.
That's ridiculous. No one thinks Kyrie's better than Steph.
Man, especially after the finals, especially right after the finals, when, man.
But not now. Not now.
I think they're still on the high.
I think they might be high.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man.
But I don't think most
people
I think most people's point guard rankings goes rough. Most people don't consider James Harden a point guard. Most people roughly, from my discussions with them, consider it like Steph, Russ, CP3, and then Kyrie, Dame, and maybe John, and then they go to Kyle Lowry and Kemba Walker. I think most people have it roughly like that. I'm with you in that Kyrie's overrated. I don't think I think it's more about the fact that Steph is the best point guard in the league, and then there is a drop off, and then you have Russ, CP3, and James, who all have their pluses and minuses, and depending on the team you have, one might be better than the other.
Yeah, one is a better fit depending on
what you got.
Steph is the guy who I think he fits no matter where.
Yeah. Because he can shoot. And this goes back to what I was saying about Kyrie. I think you're sweeping it under the rug a little bit. Because Kyrie is a great shooter, I think there are situations that I think in today's league, it's important to be a great shooter. I do agree with you that his defense can be just atrocious sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. And I mean, for me, the main thing is his playmaking. He's a guy who can't get over 5 assists a game in today's league. Like
LeBron told him the one day, he said, dude,
you can't have one assist a game.
You can't have one assist in a game, bro. That just can't be. That just can't be. So I don't know.
I don't think Kyrie's the most, because here's the thing. Where would you rank John Wall?
I would have John Wall right under him, like at around 8.
Like 8, 9, 10, right?
Yeah, 8, 9, yeah.
Would you really rather have John Wall than Drew Holiday? I know Drew's been playing a lot of 2 guard lately, but I don't know, man.
I'd rather have John because John puts more pressure on the defense when he's attacking. Because
Maybe.
I'm of the belief that this John is not
Maybe.
really John.
What's wrong with him?
I
Ain't
think
nothing
there's
wrong with him.
something wrong. I think there's something wrong with it,
He's
and I
fine.
don't think that it's physical. I think it's just
Well, that's a problem.
I think he's over this team, and I think that
It's his team.
but I think he's trapped because of the contract.
It's $40 million a year he about to get.
Yeah, I think he's trapped because of the contract.
Here's the thing. Then that is my point, is that he is a guy who, as a point guard, mentally makes your team worse, and that can override what he does statistically.
I don't know that it's him. You know, I don't know that it. I put it like this. I don't know that it's him alone.
But when he sat down, that team was moving the ball. They were playing with joy. They were winning games.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not like they had a backup point guard like a Terry Rozier, where you're replacing a decent amount of the production.
Yeah,
I was playing backup point guard for the Washington Wizards when they went on that run, man. Like, come on.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know.
No, honestly, I think he is getting into. This is harsh, and I don't mean it to be this harsh because he's not there yet. If John Wall doesn't change from how he's been the last 2.5 years, I think he's getting to a Carmelo Anthony place where his stats are completely empty and the team is never, ever, ever going to beat a real playoff team with him there.
I mean, I don't.
And I don't know what you could put around him to fix it. And that's the real problem. See, with Russell Westbrook, I could fix it. With Kyrie Irving, I could fix it. With Dame, I can fix it. With John Wall, I don't know what championship team I could put him on. I don't know any of the top 6 playoff teams that I could put John Wall on and make them better.
You know, I think that I don't know. Maybe this is just me over believing in this particular system, but I think John in San Antonio would be fantastic.
I think Kyrie in San Antonio would be better.
If you can give him the
What?
you
No,
can get
but the thing is, I mean, Kyrie healthy in Boston has already performed really, really, really well in that system. I don't think Kyrie cost them games in that system. I don't think he's the perfect fit for a Jason Tatum team, which is really what it's coming down to.
Right.
Is Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum right now aren't necessarily a great fit. But it's still not such a bad fit that they're a bad team. They're still right. They're still. But here's the thing: we're comparing Kyrie versus John, and Kyrie has been in the finals year after year after year, and is currently on what most people think is at worst the second best team in the Eastern Conference. I think there's an argument that they could be the third worst. But
it's the argument for third. It's even an argument for fourth if you believe that Philadelphia can get themselves together.
I don't think that there's any reality where Philadelphia is a better team than Boston.
Yeah,
even though you know what? No, I'm gonna leave that right there. Joel Embiid is super duper great, but Philadelphia has such bad management that's getting away with murder. They like Naughty Dog, you know, they get away with murder. They did draft Joel Embiid. They draft Ben Simmons, and every other mistake is okay. That shitty control.
Joel Embiid is Grand Theft Auto.
Right. You know what I mean? The story is so great that the bad controls let you get away with murder. That's what I think Philly is, and Boston is the opposite. They're an excellently run organization that's going through some serious injury issues with 2 of their main players coming back from injury. And didn't they lose Baines?
Yeah.
And he's a serious rotation player for them. So, you know, that's a lot of adversity for Boston. Whereas Philly ain't nothing wrong with Philly. They're just bad.
They're just bad. They're just bad.
Yeah. So no, I think now the thing with Milwaukee, I think people really are sleeping on how good they are because Milwaukee, from a personnel standpoint, was getting close, and then Brook Lopez just completely breaks the game. Like he allows them to play 5 out. They're a pro-am team now.
Yeah.
Right. So when you can play 5 out with Giannis just dunking on people, there's not really a countermeasure for that. You know, you just gotta deal with that. So, but long story short, I do think Boston's at worst the third worst team, probably the second worst team in the East. Washington is the worst team in the league.
Yes, they are. They are.
And they have no reason to be the worst team in the league.
They are. I mean,
their roster is not the worst roster in the league.
But I think sometimes things happen. We saw Kobe play on one of the worst teams in the league.
But they were actually, their roster was like one of the worst rosters.
But
you took Kobe Bryant off that team and it was like a G League team.
Well, I mean,
you take Washington off of this. I mean, you take
I saw LeBron take a team like that to the finals.
No, they weren't that bad.
Oh,
we supposed to move on to MMA, but we gonna break the show if you're gonna sit up here and tell me that Smush Parker is as good as Mo Williams, and that Chris Mim is as good as Anderson Varejao, and that was it Brian Cook is as good as Zydrunas Ilgauskas. None of those things are true.
No, Devin George was it was about on the same level with Jamario Moon and those guys that LeBron had in those.
No, but he had other players that were. Eric Snow's a solid player.
It was Larry Hughes.
If you put Eric Snow, if you simply trade Eric Snow for Smush Parker, they probably beat the Suns, dude. The Lakers beat the Suns. So stop. They were not equivalent teams. True, both teams did not have all-stars on them, but there's a long way. Kwame Brown, dude. Stop it. Kwame Brown. Anderson Varejao and Zydrunas Ilgauskas are so much better than Kwame Brown. Stop it.
The Cavs team was better, but not hugely better than that Lakers team. If you had that Cavs team without LeBron against that Lakers team without Kobe,
no, they beat them every time.
They beat them every time. But it's not ridiculously better. I
think it is. I think you're seriously underestimating how bad the core, the nucleus of Chris Mim, Smush Parker, a young and what's his name?
Devin George.
I mean, Devin George. It goes on and on. You talk about some bad players, dude. There's some bad players.
I don't know.
Literally, those are some of the worst players to ever play in the NBA. That's not it. Are you gonna argue that?
I think that is excessive.
It's not. That's the funny thing is that it's not. Literally, those players left the Lakers and couldn't get work anymore. It's not an exaggeration. It was a truly terrible team.
Pocket, I'll be weak. I'm rather unique.